Welcome to another episode of the Reboot Chronicles, a no-holds-barred forum with global leaders, authors, entrepreneurs, and CEOs about how organizations stay focused on growth and innovation in unprecedented times. I'm your host, Dean Tobias, coming to you live from Reviv's North American headquarters in Chicago, and we would like to thank you for joining us from around the globe today. I'd like to welcome a beauty industry veteran, Stirling Murray, who's the CEO of The Red Tree, UK's leading international beauty brand consultancy. You know, I think they're one of the go-to companies that has the vision and the strategy and the action that these major corporations need these days. They do it both for the large, big corporates, for private equity houses, and of course, well-funded startups, which we've had many of these indie brands on the program. So we're going to talk about that today as well. Stirling, you're looking good there.
Thank you, Dean. And thank you very much for inviting me. I know we met in New York at Beauty and Money in September, so I'm delighted we've stayed in touch, and I'm delighted to be appearing on the Reboot Chronicles.
Beauty and money, two of your favorite words, right?
Yeah, but beauty comes first.
Yeah, I hear that the salons are finally opening in at least in London. Is that working out?
We're starting to have an ease up in terms of lockdown. We've had the major retailers are now starting to open. An iconic store, John Lewis, Oxford Street, opens tomorrow.
Oh yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, there's lots of good news. So hopefully it stays that way. Still a long way to go, and I hope that we don't experience in London or anywhere else in the UK a second spike. But we'll have to see what happens. People are cautious and sensible, but, let's see.
Yeah. So tell us about The Red Tree. You started this as the founder years ago, and technically it's an agency consultancy, kind of like Okta, the company that we sold to Salesforce a while back. But tell us about the company, what you guys are up to.
Yeah, I set up the Red Tree 10 years ago. We celebrated 10 years in April, although obviously very mutedly, couldn't do much else.
No big party, huh?
Sorry, say that again?
No big parties?
No, nothing whatsoever, and didn't even have champagne. Never mind, we'll do it another time. But my background was 25 years before that in corporate life. I worked for companies like Unilever and Lauder and Chanel, both in UK and international roles. So developed really good networks and contacts, set up the business, as I said, 10 years ago. And we do two things. One is strategic consultancy with a wide mix of clients, as you mentioned. We've got expertise across all the product categories. And then the other side of the business is we manage brands. So we act as what we call country managers, and we manage brands for international brand principals across the UK and Europe. And what the latter gives us is a real sense of immediacy and pragmatism in how we deal with consultancy. So we're not a theoretical consultancy practice. We really do focus on action and look as much as possible to our client, contribute to our client success.
Yeah, I love that about your business model, is you really kind of jump into maybe not the weeds, but you were very strategic, but your implementation, you're like helping us get, so being a brand manager for various regions or countries is probably the hardest thing for especially emerging companies to do. They can't afford to hire the people. So you're almost like part of the gig economy for these folks.
Yeah, exactly. And, even during the pandemic and lockdown, I mean, we've learned a great deal, as I'm sure other companies have. And one of the things that for us is the biggest learning curve, I thought we were great at marketing. But we had this was before, COVID-19. We weren't. We were probably pretty complacent. And so we've upped our marketing activity probably by a multiple of 10. And the result is we're handling more projects this this month in June, than we were last year. Our level of inquiries has been better than we've ever had before. And that's all down to doing things like this, doing our own webinars, continually publishing articles on LinkedIn. And for us, that's a great lesson for our clients as well.
Yeah, good advice for sure. So when you look at health and beauty and cosmetics and skincare, what are some of the interesting trends that you're seeing coming out of 2020? It's been a strange time. A lot of things have shifted. We've talked a lot about this on the program, including the Reviv Health and Beauty Index, which is off the charts in terms of up 1, 2, 3, 400% of different search categories and recommending products. And So obviously that's old news. The shift to e-commerce was necessary for many, many people, but what's the impact long term now in this sector?
I think there's a number of dynamics that are driving the market. The first is for us, it's undoubtedly what is happening with e-commerce. I mean, I've been reading some stuff, and we've seen that you almost need to step back with your website, a brand's website, whether you're an indie brand, a mid-tier brand, or a corporate brand, and almost have a point of view of due diligence. What is working? What isn't working? How can you improve it? Most importantly, how is it scalable? Because there is no question there has been a big change in consumer habit. And when I hear people say, well, we can't order products we've never tried before on e-commerce, we need to go into store. It's gone. That habit is broken. People during the pandemic or lockdown will have ordered products they would never have dreamt of ordering unless they had tried them. That's across fragrance, advanced skincare, and so on. That habit will not change now. And so, that there's that relationship that needs to be thought about. There is obviously everything that's happening with transparency and vegan and clean. Those things are not going to go away, and the smarter brands are going to be developed, meeting as many of those criteria as possible. I think technology, with your Revive devices are going to increase for sure. They're here to stay. Although I read an interesting thing yesterday that Clarisonic, which was probably one of the first electronic beauty devices, is actually being closed by L'Oreal. So it'd be interesting to find out the reasons why, but that was a surprise.
Right.
And so
I think one of the reasons is it's like, are you using the next generation of technology and AI and consumers, try not to show any of my favorite screenshots here, but consumers they want to use their own device now. It's one of the huge trends we're seeing in retailers is they've got this hardware hangover going on where they want to take the mirrors out and all the touch pads because it's just too, people don't want to touch them anymore. So the trend to what we call UIOD, use your own device, is huge for everything, not just beauty, but for all types of things.
No, I fully agree. So those are the kind of things. And, every company is going to have to be smart about how they deal with, a new trading environment. I mean, I wrote an article which we published on LinkedIn and on our website about how, the pandemic has to force indie brands to grow up. And I don't mean that in a disparaging way, but they have to treat, all the dynamics of their business in a real way. I think, you look at the example of Deciem. I read in Beauty Matter this week, yesterday actually, that their attempt to bring the brand into people's home has met with an unbelievable success. And so, they're not waiting. I mean, they are taking active steps to try and build a very strong relationship with their customers. And that kind of thing is going to bode very well for the future for that kind of business. So there are lots of things all happening at once. Whoever said we live in interesting times was an understatement.
The 2020 hangover. I mean, we've interviewed people that CEOs that are having the best year of their lives. Some of them are having like maybe the worst year. It's very divergent across industry sectors. The beauty one tends to throw a lot of there's just a lot of curveballs being thrown into the mix. Consumer behavior. Yeah. You mentioned e-commerce. One of the things we've noticed with the Review Beauty Index is how many consumers have been switching brands because their stores were closed or they couldn't get or out of stock was a huge thing in March, April, May of 2020. So we've seen consumers switching to brands, and in some cases, when they're going to the store, they're looking for it. And they're not going back to the old brand. I'm sure many of them are like me. I've gone back to some, whatever products that are just, easy and they're easier to find, guy kind of stuff. But yeah. I think that has really impacted indies a lot. I think it's been very helpful for them to actually it's been a great time to actually market, very stealth marketing and not so expensive, but to target consumers and get them to switch and try new things. Are you seeing that too?
Right. And that's why I think, Deciem at Home, which is the name they've given it, is such a brilliant, initiative because, again, that cements the relationship between the brand and its consumer. And that's, what brands are going to have to think about doing, and that's what they're going to have to work at. And I think I mean, it's interesting because we're developing on behalf of clients some new brands within the skincare and so on, and I find it really difficult when I hear a brand say, "Well, we're fully sustainable, we're totally vegan, we're totally transparent, we're totally clean." It's not. I don't think it's possible yet.
No.
I think that's a story that you have to take the consumer on. But it's, that is a story that is not going to go away. And unless brands adopt those principles early on in their life, they're going to get left behind. And
yeah, we talked about that with the founder and CEO of Credo about how, they've got their dirty list and they've got, 30, 40, 50 brands that are definitely clean and certifiable and ethical and all that stuff. But when I look at other large brands across the spectrum, I think the research was 54% of them claim to have all those claims. And in the article I just wrote about them, I said, I don't believe that.
No.
You can use the words because there's no legal ramifications around it. So I mean, you work with some of the biggest brands in the world and the smallest. Let's start with the biggest. Why is it so hard for them to say, hey, clean, beauty, ethical, open, whatever you want to, all check all the boxes, vegan. There's lots of different ones that have just tons of additives that are just not great for your hair, your skin, whatever. Why have they had such a hard time shifting? I mean, I've had a couple of them on, and they've said, well, it's really not the big mass market. I'm like, yet, maybe not, but the word yet has to be thrown in there.
I think
it's going to be, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think they're like big ships. They take a long, long time to turn around. I mean, one of the best brands we've ever worked with was a brand called First Aid Beauty, founded by
very good.
a brilliant entrepreneur, Lily Gordon. And that was an indie brand. That was one of the first indie brands, I think, that
she's pretty sharp, too.
Sorry? So
she's pretty sharp.
Oh, yeah, amazingly sharp. And that was, we managed that brand for 7 years and grew it into a great business in the UK. And then it was sold to P&G, I think, about around mid-2017 for an undisclosed sum, but in excess of $250 million, I'm sure. And so, indie brands can grow. And it's, I guess, that's why you're seeing incubators set up by Benkiser, by L'Oreal and so on, so they can come in at the
Sephora has an accelerator.
Yeah.
We've actually interviewed a couple of their participants. They love it, even though it's virtual now, which is fine. What about, didn't you work on Ven? Wasn't that another one?
Yeah, I mean, Ven is a fabulous brand.
What's their story?
A streamlined beauty brand created in South Korea.
What does that mean?
Streamlined, so that there is a trend, a Far East trend, where you use 10 products for your beauty regime. If you the problem is that takes time. There's also duplication and so on. So Ven,
exhausting, yeah.
It is. I mean,
I've watched this process.
Guys, it's water, shaving cream, razor, and goodbye. But
some days.
The use of a lot of products in the complex regime is countered by those brands that believe that you don't need that many products. And Ven is a brand that is about streamlined beauty, fabulous creative brand, clinicals, brilliant efficacy. And we put together the UK strategic thinking for the brand, how they should enter the UK and Europe. And we've worked, and that brand is now available in places like Liberty, Net-a-Porter, and in some really interesting selective retails. Fabulous brand with a great future. And again, that's an indie brand. It's not a major brand yet. I'm sure it will be, but some indie brands are going to make it big, and many indie brands are not going to make it at all.
Yeah, those of you that are new to this vocabulary, indie brand basically is a fancy word for startups, but it just sounds so much cooler. Let's go back to your point about all the shifting that's gone on in the pandemic. So we talked about the consumers, but what are some of these companies doing, retailers, brands, to pivot? And some of these pivots are short term until people get more comfortable.
Yeah,
things get better, and some are long term.
Yeah,
what do you see?
I think when the lockdown started in the UK, I don't know if this was the same in the US, but when the lockdown started in the UK, everybody was in a state of shock. Yes. Every single beauty contact we had, we spoke to them. it was, probably the most pessimistic 2 weeks of my business life. But it
felt like 2 years though. Yes.
Yeah, it did. But it was the same across the whole beauty industry. Once people started to think rationally, we were convinced, and we told all our clients, okay, this is not great news. You can't control events, but you can control how you react to them. And you need to emerge out of this more strongly. And so, that's the push we've been doing. And a classic example is Space NK, which is a brilliant retailer with 73 stores in the UK, very premium and a brilliant mix of products.
Yeah, beautiful stores too.
They are incredible, and their stores had to be closed, but they have pushed their business on their website by leaps and bounds because they're constantly introducing new brands, extending the SKU count of the existing brands, and really using this as a platform to entice consumers into their business. So, there's a very polite saying which I don't know if I'm sure you've heard of Tesco, which is the UK's leading grocery chain. The original founder had a saying that you can't do business sitting on your backside. There's a more appropriate word that he used, and I won't use that. But you can't do business sitting on your backside. And I think
you can use that. We're like HBO here.
No, it's okay. The thing is, you have to have an extremely positive attitude, and you have to find resilience, and you have to find ways of overcoming it. And those brands that have done that are going to emerge strongly. Yep. They're going to be very wise. They're going to be very innovative. Some of the things that, and it's inevitable that those brands that can't do that, I hate to say it, are going to disappear. It's the way it is. And, we think that the beauty industry is an easy industry. There was a great quote by a Forbes CEO who moved from IT into beauty. And he said the first thing he realized was that beauty is a grind out industry. You have to keep on at it. You have to keep pushing it, and you don't give up.
Yeah, and the margins are nice though compared to other retail categories.
Yeah, they are good.
That kind of helps. You talked about the article that you wrote, which was interesting, around trends. So transparency was one, ethical beauty was two, inclusivity. I'm not sure what that means for that category. But the last one you hit on was new categories. So let's go into that, because I'm always intrigued by what's next and what's new.
Yeah,
you mentioned two in there. One was CBD, which I was interested in. The other one was antipollution.
Yep. I think anti-pollution is going to be extremely necessary, and I think we're still yet. We're working with one CBD.
What does that mean, anti-pollution? So we do like skin care, we do sun care. Is it protective coating for?
I think it's a protective coating, and I think like
a hazmat suit. What are we talking here?
No. It's
not that protective.
Yeah. It's to protect the skin from pollutants. And obviously, one of the things that we've seen quite astonishingly during lockdown is that, as pollutants were reduced, just the sheer level of increase in light and so on. So I think what's really going to be interesting, there are going to be unbelievable advances in ingredients and materials that go into skincare, color cosmetics, so that color cosmetics will be color with skincare benefits and so on. So there's going to be real astounding developments in skincare ingredients. Nanotechnology, I'm sure, will come into force again. And, just make you individualized, personalized skincare regimes. So, there's going to be a lot of scientific advances married to the demand for natural ingredients, and that's going to be a unique a unique and very powerful combination.
Yeah, that's a good. Those two are a good combination. If I was to add a third piece, let's make a Venn diagram, because that's what I do. Is technology. So AI technology, being able to scan your face, and then right now it's used to recommend out of 20 SKUs, what are the 4 that you should use for your face at this moment of time in your life in this location that you're in. Yep. But in the future, especially as you take nano and all the different ingredient technology, it can actually help to develop specific formulas just for you. So yours is going to be yours will be different than mine, just based on where you live. That's easy. So are you going to We've actually had a couple of these custom ingredient companies on. There's one in the UK that's a startup. It seems like a tougher business to scale. I know you weren't just talking about custom built products just for you, but I'm seeing that as a trend. As a scale business guy, I'm still questioning how we take that to scale. And I think that's one of the issues with the big brands is they think it's interesting, but it's just not massive enough. Do you see that continuing to grow, or is it going to stay kind of a niche?
No, I don't think brands have broken how that works yet, and that will still be an interesting one because all of us, our skin tones are very differently, our skin thickness is very differently, and that's why there's a big difference between female and male grooming. And interestingly, male grooming is here to stay as well, particularly what's happened over the last 10 to 12 weeks. So that's another area that is going to grow. It's never going to explode, but it's going to show steady growth year in, year out, and certainly above the total market. I think, it's really interesting because we did a project for a Swiss company who are as far removed from beauty as it is possible to be. They're introducing insulating materials for heavy industrial generators. So beauty was so far away from their business, couldn't really get much further. But they found that there was an ingredient from one of their production processes that might have a possible use as a cosmetic ingredient. And we were commissioned to do, all the research. We did due diligence. We brought in a great formulator. And this material certainly offers an advanced difference to what's currently available on the market in that it's natural, it's cold pressed, it has it's totally vegan, and its use as a product can certainly go a long way. And we eventually took it to distributors, and the company signed a deal with Givaudan, who are one of the globe's biggest cosmetic handlers. So things are going to come from from ways that we didn't even think of before. So
that was technically a byproduct for that company, something that
totally.
they would throw it away.
Yeah, exactly right.
I love that type of innovation. I mean, that is serendipity innovation. It probably took someone like you to figure out, there's actually a use for this. I'm envisioning grease or oil from a generator or something. Hopefully it's something better than that.
Before that.
That's probably the best example I've heard. But yeah, the ingredients business, we're not going to get into that today, but we're seeing that in the food space. So I advise an investment firm that's just investing in food. And what they've realized in terms of going green and clean and vegan is the reason big companies can't scale is because there's not enough ingredients. There's not enough companies focused on ingredients. So it seems like that's a similar thing in this industry.
It's a bit catch-22, yeah. But I think, that there is, the larger corporates are making, attempts to do that. You've seen Lauder purchase a stake in Deciem. You have the accelerators that we've spoken about. Yep. And all of those things are encouraging. I personally think the beauty industry is a very strong, resilient business, and growth is going to come from some of those small independent brands or indie brands, as we said earlier, growing very quickly. And you look at Glossier or Huda Beauty, and I know, they now have huge financial backing, but they didn't in the beginning.
Right.
And Drunk Elephant, another example, Dollar Shave Club, all of those brands started from great ideas and great innovations.
Yeah, including crazy brand names, Drunk Elephant, who would have thought? Yeah. So what about retailers in the beauty space? We've talked a lot about, sampling is dead, it's going digital, bring your own device, but what's going to be the impact here? So e-commerce is a big one, but what are they still doing wrong, I guess, in terms of if you wanted to give retailers some advice here?
I mean, I personally love I think it's what retailers have to focus on is what I would call the shopping experience. What happens when you go into a store? People, shopping is ingrained into people's habits, and people love going shopping on their own, with friends, with family, or whatever. I hope that doesn't change. I hope people still value the shopping experience, and maybe we will see, a whole raft of smaller stores like Urban Outfitters, which are like mini department stores.
Right.
We've got a couple in the UK like Oliver Bonus, and another one escapes my mind. But they're sort of small units. They sell furniture, clothing, cards, print, beauty, and so on. And it's a pleasurable experience. What's happened with the department stores, I think it's the same in the US as it is here. They just lost sense of how people shop. They didn't offer a shopping experience that was relevant to people's lives. And so I hope that can change. I also hope that city centres that lose department stores can be converting those space to residential, so that people live in cities as well. So, I'm optimistic. If you said to me, what's one thing that you could say to retailer, I would just say, make the shopping experience enjoyable. Do not leave people waiting. Serve them quickly. And if it's a showroom for your online, then make sure that everything is seamlessly linked.
Yep. Yeah, many of them have spent time, the good ones, in saying, hey, shopping is about using all of your senses, taste, smell, vision, audio, everything. And unfortunately, with the trend they're on now is we need to just sterilize everything. So they have to go away from that for a while. So somewhere in the middle it needs to meet, because the shift to e-commerce, we've accelerated that by 5 to 10 years, depending on the industry, is not coming. It's not coming back, and people are foregoing that social, all the senses kind of experiential. Yeah. So that's good advice. And by the way, Sterling, I really want to thank you for being on. I think more importantly, given your just intense experience with helping brands in almost any industry, I find this advice to be helpful for startups, especially consumer-facing ones or consumer-related. Just as some good parting words, what kind of advice would you give to a lot of the indie brands listening in, and what they should do over the next 12 months?
Oh God, that could take a couple of hours, but I'll be really quick. I mean, I just think, there's a couple of things really. I think the first is, if you are not trading aggressively through your website, you're going to have a problem. You need to make it scalable. You need to look at how it works, where the weaknesses are and where the strengths are, and you need to make that work for you big time. And it should be 30-40% of your business. Because that's where you're going to make a bigger margin anyway, because you're not sharing anything with the retailer. So that's the one thing. I think the other thing is that you have to, it's a great term I learned when I was at Lauder, you have to outreach. They don't say reach out, you have to outreach to your consumers. That's exactly what Decium have done. Without blowing our own trumpet, it's exactly what we've done. We've reached out had an outreach program that we've never had before, and we should have been doing that years ago. And I think, you have to say that you can't wait for customers to come to you. You have to go to them, and you have to let them know what you do, and you have to get your brand on the radar. That sounds like a lot, but I think, those are the couple of points.
A lot of noise out there, though, digitally, advertising wise. Like, how do you bust through that?
With difficulty, but you've got to find ways of doing it. You have to be clever. You have to think differently. Yeah, you're right. There is a lot of noise, and there are brands with millions of followers. But if you don't attempt to do that, you're going to get left behind. You really are. There's a coaching system, a business coaching system that I read about many years ago. And in fact, I went on one of their courses where they believe you should times everything by 10. Whatever you're doing, you want to go by 10. Now, you may not hit 10, but you're probably going to get 5 or 6 rather than saying you want to double your business. And you have to have that attitude. It isn't easy. I have every sympathy for brands that are struggling and finding it difficult, but you mustn't give up. And the other point is, also smell the coffee. If you're still in this, you're in this space after 5 years, please give up. Do something else with your time.
If it's not going well, you mean?
Sorry?
Yeah. If it's not going well, you mean?
Yeah. I mean, there's a limit, and, we see clients that, potential clients who have really struggled, and we have to say to them, look, for whatever reason, this is not going to work. And, you shouldn't spend any more time. So that's, a contradiction when I say you shouldn't give up. But I think you've also got to be pragmatic and sensible.
No, I think it's good advice. Or they should call you. Well, thanks. You've been listening. We've been listening to Stirling Murray from The Red Tree. And he has a lot to say about this industry. I think we'll be having him back soon. So thanks for coming on today. Good to see you.
Thank you, Dean. Take good care.
Cheers.
Bye.